All right. Hello, fellow revolutionaries, fellow citizens and non citizens, fellow believers and non believers. Hello to all of you. I'm here with the most delicious bread ever, not just because the queen made it, but it's got chocolate chips in it and it's super dank and it's delicious and wonderful. And I think everyone should have baked goods in their life. It's the one thing I agree with you socialists on, a federal program that provides bread. So we we agree on that. Got the coffee as usual. So I figure I'd do a more direct video assessing before where I had made the statement that I wasn't necessarily wrong, but I've changed my tune on a former assessment that I had about the election. Now, I had done the video in the park, which was, interrupted. Like, I don't know why I thought going into a park it would be empty at that time. So I'm sorry that that abruptly ended and got the usual, interruptions that come from being out in public in a park. So I fully own that. But to bring it back to the focus, I truly believed keeping the ship sailing is what we needed to do by electing Trump. Now, everything that came with him, I don't think I need to do the list. Obviously, a lot of alt right cancer, there was a lot of racists, there was plenty of Nazi sympathizers that helped him get elected. And with that, I'm sure that they were on his cabinet. I mean, they're Steve Bannon, monster, good at what he does, and so is Karl Rove. But to bring it back to the focus where I thought the reelection of Trump would give us a snowball's chance to continue as a country so we could figure it out. That business as usual was a death sentence for the other half of the country, if not more. Police brutality, the system that targets minorities, whether you want to believe it or not, the numbers don't lie. And the reason more white people die at the hands of police is because there's more of us here. And with that, the data shows that there's more violent altercations with armed or attempted aggressive white individuals than the rest of the people that end up dying at the hands of police officers. Now, pertaining to that business as usual, if we had reelected Trump, and I'm going to get into like who and what got elected, but that business as usual, that's the prison industrial complex going. That's an unchecked addressing of law enforcement and the criminal justice system. Although Obama built the cages, under Trump's watch, it didn't go away. So, however much you want to blame him or not blame him for that, I want to address that. But business as usual continues to not address the situations and issues in this country that are literally killing people. And if you look at the numbers of what the economic impact has had on the African American community, it's devastating compared to the effect it's had on other ethnicities, other social demographics. Those numbers don't lie. So a business as usual with the reelection of Trump, like that's one small part of things that just simply wouldn't get addressed. Now, with the election of Biden, let us not forget the electronic voting machines that got Bush reelected way back in the early 2000s. Let's not forget about the DNC shredding and burning the ballots for Bernie Sanders and we literally saw videos of electronic voting machines vote for Bernie, went for Hillary. I mean, the DNC has its own cancer because like any place of power, they can be hijacked. Now, to keep this from all just being statements about how bad it is, when it came to the result of the election with Biden winning, whether that was, there's obviously a lot of evidence that there was foul play, as there was in other elections. If you had gone back and listened to the testimony of former FBI Director James Comey I listened to every minute of that. And I'm going to spare you because I don't think you should have to go back and listen to it. But our nation's intelligence saw that the power behind the communist authority of Russia and China sought since the 1950s in the Cold War to undermine the American people's faith in democracy. And I've stated this in other videos. I don't think it takes much. I don't think we want to have the conversation of democracy didn't fail us, we failed democracy. We allowed the corruption to get to this point, and we went through our lives, and we did our coffees, or played Guitar Hero when it came out, or paid our mortgages, or tried to keep our accounts from overdrafting, or working towards our dreams. It was, taking on the system is like, if you have any amount of responsibility, it's very hard to engage that in any meaningful way and survive. So year after year, decade after decade, we get corrupt leaders. Now, in the event of Trump trying to prove that there was election fraud, in conjunction with the fact that former FBI Director James Comey said that this plan had been brewing since the 1950s and on. We know that the power behind the DNC during the last election formed that Silicon Valley. We all know Hillary and Biden and Obama facilitated a whole bunch of business dealings with Uranium One, the airplanes that were provided for Russian airliners, commercial. There was a bunch of tech companies that were set up that influenced the election and all that. Now, for all this to actually come about, there's some things we have to recognize. Now, is Trump some kind of messiah? I mean, I think God can use him just as much as he can use Obama. But the point that I'm getting at here is Trump had made statements in 2012, 2014, 2016, and right up on through here, the concern over election fraud. And let me tell you, good or bad, right or wrong, we all know the DNC toasted Bernie when he totally won it. So with Trump sounding the alarm, and Comey, long before Trump ever was in office, saying that there was a plan to undermine our faith in democracy, well, that's a tremendous amount of proof. And then, Trump was sounding the warning long before that. So what does this mean? Like, where is this whole rant going? Okay, if Trump knew that this was coming and he could kamikaze it, then exposing what we already know, that the system is in fact corrupt and you can buy your way in or out with votes and everything like that, well, if it's undeniably proven yet again how corrupt the system is, in a sense, sure, the powers that seek to undermine the entire fabric of our society win. But what also can be looked at here is when that is proven. And again, I want to say this. Biden winning, right or wrong, good or bad, the people who are fighting to simply exist, the people who had to face an America where racists were emboldened, where they no longer felt safe, they didn't get an America too for 4 years. The reason they're not rioting, and again, I'm not talking about the white people that are bussed in and paid by Soros to burn down someone else's community. I'm talking about everyone who was nice enough to just go about their lives in poverty and struggling and didn't burn down their communities, okay? So those people for the past 4 years, they didn't get to see a very good America. And aside from all of Biden's pedo grossness and sick dealings with his kid and the third hard drive, I'm not excusing any of that. But they weren't voting for Biden just like how people weren't voting for Trump. They were voting for an America that they thought we, or at least the people on their side, would survive. And good or bad, right or wrong, the election of Biden, one way or another, is actually giving a sense of hope to the people who didn't have it for 4 years. So given the fact that we very well could be facing irrefutable evidence yet again of how corrupt the system is, you don't need to do a firework for Trump. You don't need to wave a flag. And you don't need to, hoist a DSA flag if you don't want to. What we have to recognize is that we no longer can depend on the system. We no longer can depend on the infrastructure and scaffolding of this system. And we certainly can't look to our leaders to properly represent us. When it comes out that all of this is way worse than we thought, it's going to leave us with one choice and one choice only. We can either root for our side, because let me tell you, if it turns out your side won by cheating, would you be upset? Or would you be happy that your side won? I'm not trying to have that conversation. What I am trying to do is say that we are going to have a choice. When we are faced with just how corrupt, when we are faced with just how evil and sick that this whole thing is, that we already know, but when we have to look at the proof, that doesn't mean we need to double down on supporting Trump. That doesn't mean we need to double down on supporting Biden or the RNC or the DNC. What it means is all those systems and individuals and power structures have failed us. So whoever's side wins, it's going to be up to us to look to each other, because we can't look to them. Remember, you are the revolution, and I'll probably see you up there.